Okay, moving on to the next part of the sink project, we're going to build the outer mould. Now I've cut pieces of melamine. This is the base and these are the sides, and what I'm going to do is attach these to each side of the mould, and then we're going to put, let me show you like that, to each side of the mould, and then we're going to sit the insert in the middle and then pour the concrete over the top. So let's start by just drilling the holes. So a handy tip is to just draw a line, pencil, down there. We'll do the same on all of them. You'll see why I'm doing this in a moment. Okay, so I've drawn my lines down here so that when I screw into the side, then I know I'm going to be going in the centre of the baseboard. So I'm just going to drill 3 holes. On each section. Okay, so I've drilled the holes on each section now. The next thing I'm going to do is with a countersink bit. And you don't need this necessarily, it just makes for a neater job. It's just countersink each hole so that when I come to put the screws in, it sits neatly and flush in the melamine. This isn't, like I say, entirely necessary, it just makes for a neater mould. Okay, so all the holes are drilled and I have countersunk them, and we're ready to start screwing the sides into the base. So take up my drill bit, put my screwdriver bit in, and I'm going to marry that up. And I'm using plasterboard screws here. You get a good bite in melamine. There we go. So nice. Okay. So I can flip this over now and show you here. Okay, and that is our box. That's 3 sides fitted. What I'm going to do now is just make sure that these sides are vertical, and then I'm going to sink a couple of screws down here as well, just to make it that much more rigid. So I have my square, and I can see that that side needs to come in just a little. So I'm going to do the same as before. Drill the pilot hole. Move this around so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, check for squareness again. Nice and square, and we'll do the other side as well. Okay, so that's most of the mould built. I'm going to attach this final side, but then I'm going to take it off and I'll show you why in a minute. First of all, as before, get those screws in. Okay, that's done. I'm going to take one side off for the purposes of the video, because at this point we need to put silicone in the joints between the sides to make it nice and neat for when we're casting. The other reason why we put silicone in the joints is because there's 0.5 mil gap, say, in these sections. When the concrete is poured in there, it will sit in that gap, and it will the water will, the moisture from the mix will seep into it and make the wood chips in the melamine expand. The second thing is, because it draws moisture out of the concrete, it will make that edge a little bit weaker, and it will be more likely it'll crumble slightly when you take it out of the mold. So the way we get around that is to use silicone. We use sanitary sealant, Silarub S from Soodle. We use it in all our molds. It's great stuff, but that's not to say that there aren't any other decent brands out there. There are plenty, but it's just the one that we've chosen. So we're going to apply this to all the edges, and then we're going to tool it off using a silicone tool. But you can use anything. You can use a pencil with a rubber on the end. They work quite well. Just make sure you've got lots of kitchen towel or similar so that you don't make a huge mess. So I'm going to go ahead, silicone this now, and then we will tool everything off. So don't forget to do verticals. Done. Okay, so I've got some kitchen towel and a silicone tool. Now you can get these from Amazon, you can get them from Screwfix, you can get them from Toolstation, I'm sure you can get them from B&Q, Wix. Any good DIY store will have silicone tools. You can use the end of a pencil as well. Either will do. So, piece of kitchen towel. I'm going to start with the vertical, but that's just my preference. And just work that up and take the excess off the one side. I don't know whether you can pick that up, but I've taken it off the one side. Let's go over that again, make it nice and neat. What it does is it leaves a residue on the other side, so we're going to go up the other side as well. And the benefit of using these tools is that they have an angle on both sides to allow you to do that. So you keep going back over each side until you're left with a neat bead. Another tip, certainly with these silicone tools, is we've got a 4 mil round on that side and then a 6 mil on the other. So you can run along that edge with a 4mm. As long as you've got most of it out, just do the other side. So we've done the base there on both of them. Oops, not quite neat enough. A bit better. So I can now flip to the 6mm and it won't interfere with the bead that I've just tooled off, because that's a 4mm radius and the 6mm radius is bigger, so it shouldn't touch it. Now, silicone can get messy, so it's definitely worth, if it's your first time or you haven't done this too often, then using a pair of protective gloves, not because it'll hurt your hands, but because it can get quite messy. So I try to be as neat as possible, simply because when you pour your concrete mix into the mould, because it's liquid and it has time to settle and cure, it will find the form of your mould. So any imperfections will be found as well. And we're pretty much there. So if you are enjoying this video, click the like button below to let us know that you're enjoying it. Also, whilst you're down there, click the subscribe button and then click the little bell icon next to it. And that means that every time we upload a video, you'll be notified. So before we put the final side on the outer part of the sink mould, we need to position and fix in place the sink insert. So the easiest way to do that is to pop your sink insert into the outer mould and measure to make sure that the sides are roughly the same. There we go. I'm quite happy that that is in the correct position. I'm then going to take a pencil and just mark around the outside. On all sides. Try and get the curves as well, if you've got any curved or radius edges, because you're going to use this guide to position your silicone as well. So what we're going to do is, as you can see, I've marked the position there so we know where it's going to go. And using our silicone then, I'm going to put a thin bead on the sink insert. Spin that round and very gently, using the marks, drop that into place. Give it a firm push down. And what you'll find is that that silicone then squishes out around the edges. And what we're going to do is, because we can't get the silicone tool down inside, we're going to use a longer implement like a pencil, and we're going to use that to tool off. So when it comes to tooling off, I'm going to use the end of a pencil. Now, a good tip is to get some water, some fairy liquid or any other brand. Give that a mix, and what that will do is it will help stop the silicone from gunging up. So I'll do this front bit first so you can see how I'm doing it. Shake off the excess. And we're just going to run that along there. And we're going to be as neat as we can. So you're just going to keep going, a bit like you did on the sides before of the outer mould, and you keep going until you've taken all the excess off. And actually, the pencil with a bit of fairy liquid and water makes much lighter work of it. So when we're doing the deeper parts, I've got another pencil here, and I'm going to tape those together, and then we'll start tooling it off. So as before, just drag the pencil down and back in. If you leave a little bit in there, don't worry too much, because when we come to demold the concrete, we'll be able to sand and fill any imperfections. So we'll just do the final side now. Again, with my taped up pencil. Running it down the edge, wipe off any excess, washing up liquid once more, and keep going until we get a nice neat edge, or as neat as you can make it. Now, the silicone performs two roles. It makes a nice, neat edge. But in the case of the insert, when we come to pouring the concrete in, it stops the concrete from coming underneath the insert and pushing it up or moving it. So it's important that you've got a good continuous bead. So when I was applying the silicone to that edge before, I'm sure you noticed that it was a good thick edge. So it's better to have a little bit more than too little, because we don't want any gaps. When we come to actually pouring the concrete, we are going to hold this down and hold it in place using a bar across the top, which will stop it from moving, but we still don't want any concrete seeping underneath. So, final part now is to reattach the outer section of the mould. So I have the outer section of the mould here with all the screws ready. Before I screw that in place, I need to apply silicone to the edges again of the mould. This time I'm not going to get as neat a finish on the edge of the mould, but as long as there's a decent enough bead, it means that the joint will be watertight, and you'll have it, instead of having a small round on the joint, you'll have a square edge. So offer that up, make sure it's in place. And screw it in. Now there's a thin bead of silicone that's squidged on the inside. It's also squidged out on the outside. We don't have to worry about the bit on the inside. Just as before, I'm going to take our pencil and I'm going to take any excess off. And that is the sink mould pretty much complete. We're going to leave the silicone dry now for, well, at least 12 hours before we start thinking about mixing up the concrete and pouring it in. When we do, just before we do that, we need to build the sink waste to go on there. That's very simple. And then we need to put a bar across that way or that way and then hold the sink insert in place for when we pour the concrete. But essentially, that is the sink insert and outer mould assembled, and we're ready to go.